Last weekend, I invited my parents over for dinner, hoping for a pleasant evening. But everything changed because of a small performance by my daughter. She's only been taking piano lessons for a short time, but she was so proud to play a song. To my surprise, instead of encouragement, my parents laughed and criticized her. The feeling I had in that moment is hard to describe, but my reaction right after made me wonder, did I go too far? Last weekend, I invited my parents over for dinner. Family gatherings are rare, and I thought this would be a good opportunity for my daughter to show her grandparents what she's been working on lately. My 10-year-old daughter loves music and has been diligently practicing her piano. Although she's only learned 2 short songs, she puts in a lot of effort. Over the past few weeks, she's been practicing every evening, and I could see the progress she was making. She was really excited when she found out her grandparents would be visiting. She couldn't wait, and all morning I heard the sound of her piano playing in the living room. She had decided to play a song she had just learned, even though she knew it wasn't perfect. But she believed that if she could show them her progress, her grandparents would be proud. She was so eager for their approval. I could tell she had been practicing especially hard for this moment. As my parents arrived, I felt hopeful that everything would go smoothly. We prepared dinner and chatted casually. Both of my parents were enjoying the meal, and the atmosphere was pleasant. After dinner, my daughter rushed into the living room to grab her small piano. "Grandma, Grandpa, I'm going to play a song for you," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I could see the pride in her face as she spoke. There was a slight nervousness in her, but it was the excitement of a child wanting to show off her hard work. She sat down at the piano, her fingers lightly touching the keys, and began playing the song. As I had expected, there were a few wrong notes and pauses in the rhythm, but she was fully focused, and it seemed like she didn't mind the small mistakes. She played with all her heart, smiling throughout, trying her best to finish the song. When she finished, I was the first to clap. I saw the big smile on her face, her eyes gleaming with joy. But just as I started clapping, my parents ruined the moment. They didn't clap. Instead, they looked at each other and burst into laughter. Not a light chuckle, but a full-on belly laugh. My mom broke the silence with a question. Was this her first time playing this song? Her voice was mocking, as though she were trying to find a reason for the mistakes. My dad couldn't hold back and added, "Even a dog could play that better." I watched my daughter freeze. Her smile vanished, and she looked down embarrassed. She whispered, "No, I've had 2 lessons, but it's hard to play with both hands." The moment she spoke, my parents just laughed even harder. I could feel the anger building inside me, and I stood up, unable to contain my frustration. I couldn't watch my daughter be treated this way, especially when she had worked so hard. The laughter from my parents felt like a blow to my chest. My daughter, who had been smiling and glowing with pride over her performance, suddenly shrank back, her confidence disappearing in the face of their cruel comments. I couldn't stand to watch it. The anger and disappointment swelled inside me. I stood up, feeling as though a fire was burning inside me. I'm not usually one to lose my temper, but this time was different. This was my daughter, the child I love and protect with all my heart, and I couldn't let my parents continue to treat her like this. I looked straight at them, unable to hold back the emotions that were boiling over inside me. "Leave," I said, my voice firm. My mom looked at me, a hint of surprise crossing her face, as though she couldn't understand what was happening. My dad let out one of his characteristic sighs, still showing no concern for my anger. "We haven't finished our drinks yet?" My mom said, trying to maintain calm, as if it were just some misunderstanding. But I couldn't stay calm any longer. I looked at my daughter, who was still with her head down, nervously fidgeting with her dress, as if she wanted to disappear from their gaze. Their words echoed in my head, each one like a knife piercing her heart. I couldn't let this continue. I spoke again, this time louder, more forceful. "Get your things and leave right now." My parents were stunned, clearly not understanding why I was so angry. My mom tried to hold them back, saying she wanted to hear another song, but I didn't want to hear anything else. Their behavior had ruined a beautiful moment for my daughter, and I wasn't going to let them destroy it any further. They were supposed to be grandparents, but their cruelty and lack of respect made me feel utterly disappointed. My daughter didn't deserve to be treated like that. My mom began trying to explain, saying, "You don't have to do this. You can't protect her forever. She needs to learn to handle this kind of teasing. It's how she'll grow and face the real world." But I couldn't listen to that. That's not the way I wanted my daughter to learn about the world. Not through mockery and belittling. That wasn't the real world they were talking about. This isn't teaching her the real world. This is bullying. And this kind of behavior is why I ended up so messed up, I shouted, unable to hold back any longer. My words hit my parents hard, and they stood there, stunned, without a response. We didn't say anything more. I didn't want to hear any more excuses. They silently gathered their things and left without saying a word. Meanwhile, I turned back to my daughter, gently sitting down beside her and pulling her into my arms. "I'm so proud of you. You did really well. Don't let their words hurt you," I whispered. After my parents left, I sat down next to my daughter, feeling the heavy silence that filled the space. She was still sitting there, looking sad, her eyes downcast and her shoulders slightly hunched, as if she hadn't been able to shake off the cruel comments from her grandparents. I knew she was still hurting. But at that moment, I knew I had to be the one to help her get through it. "You did so well," I said, holding her close. "I'm so proud of you. Don't let what they said make you feel like you're not enough. Those small mistakes don't mean you're not good. I saw how hard you tried." She didn't say anything, but I could feel her body relax a bit in my arms. I could tell my words were comforting her, even though there was still some hurt in her. After a while of silence, I knew I needed to make it clear to her that none of this was her fault. It was just her grandparents' lack of respect. "I know you're upset, but what they said isn't true. They don't understand you, and they don't know how to treat others with kindness. You're learning, and that's what matters the most." She nodded, and I could see a sense of relief in her eyes, though there was still a hint of sadness. Later that night, as my daughter went to bed, I felt an uneasy tug in my chest. I wondered if I had done the right thing by asking my parents to leave immediately. While I felt certain that my actions were justified, I still couldn't shake the guilt I felt for reacting so strongly. Over the years, I'd tried to maintain a good relationship with my parents, even though I knew their words could be hurtful. But this time, I couldn't let them destroy such an important moment in my daughter's life. The next morning, I sent my parents a message, explaining that I couldn't continue a relationship with them unless they changed their attitude. "We need some time to think," I wrote. "If you can't respect my daughter, I won't allow you to be part of our lives." I knew this would create tension, but I didn't have any other choice. I couldn't let them continue to treat my daughter this way. Shortly after, I got a reply from my dad. He wasn't worried. He just said that it was my choice. But he also mentioned that he didn't understand why I had become so sensitive. His response felt like a punch to the gut, but I knew I couldn't back down. I wouldn't let them continue to treat my family like this. While I was still angry, I felt a bit lighter after having clearly set my boundaries with my parents. My daughter needed an environment filled with love and respect, and I would do whatever it took to protect her from the hurt caused by those who couldn't understand the value of kindness. On Sunday morning, I received a message from my dad. At first, I thought he might apologize or at least explain his actions, but instead, it was a short response. "It's your choice, but I don't understand how you became so sensitive." The reply hit me like a shock. I had hoped for a conversation, an apology, but what I got was indifference and a lack of understanding of my feelings. It seemed like he didn't realize that I wasn't just protecting my daughter. I was demanding basic respect for my family. The disappointment and hurt surged inside me, but I also knew this wasn't the first time I had felt this way. Feeling a bit confused, I turned to my daughter. She was playing with her toys in the living room, and although she didn't say anything, I could see the worry in her eyes. I didn't want her to see how much this was affecting me, but I couldn't hide my frustration. When she noticed I was lost in thought, she came over and asked, "Mom, are Grandma and Grandpa mad at you?" I looked into her eyes, forcing a smile despite the weight in my chest. "No, sweetie. Grandma and Grandpa aren't mad at me, but sometimes adults think differently and don't understand how children feel. But you don't need to worry. I'll always be here to protect. Although my words seemed to comfort her a little, I knew she was still hurt. She wasn't as excited as before, and it was clear that their words had left a mark on her, and that was something I couldn't accept. As the day went on, I felt increasing tension in my relationship with my parents. I didn't want to distance myself from them, but I couldn't continue letting them treat my daughter like this. Honestly, I didn't know what to do next. I didn't want to lose my relationship with them, but I couldn't allow them to keep hurting my family, especially my daughter. So I decided that I had to be clearer about my boundaries. I wouldn't tolerate any more disrespect. I sent a message to my mom saying I needed time to think about our relationship. Mom, I need some time for us to reflect on this. If you and Dad can't change your attitude, we'll need some space. I didn't know if my mom would understand, but I felt this was the only decision I could make right now. While I felt conflicted, I also realized I was doing the right thing. Family relationships can't be built on disrespect. My daughter needed to grow up in a loving and safe environment, not one filled with criticism and mockery from those who should have been protecting and loving her. On Monday, as I got back to work and the usual tasks, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened over the weekend. While I felt I had done the right thing by protecting my daughter, the worry about my family relationships still left me feeling uneasy. The messages from my parents kept echoing in my mind. Naturally, I couldn't help but feel sad and angry when I recalled how they behaved, especially when they didn't even realize they were in the wrong. I couldn't just move on without addressing the issue once and for all. That day, I received a call from my sister. I had expected her to defend my parents and condemn my actions, but I wasn't prepared for the way she reacted. Mom and Dad are really upset. They don't understand why you acted like that toward them. You can't treat your parents that way. You're spoiling your daughter too much, she said, her tone judgmental. The anger from the call started rising in me again, but I tried to stay calm. Do you know what Mom and Dad did to my daughter? I asked, unable to hide my disappointment. They laughed at her. Do you know that? She tried her best, and they laughed like she wasn't worth respecting. She's a child, and I'm just protecting her. There was silence on the other end for a moment, perhaps because my strong reaction made her pause. But she didn't stay quiet for long, repeating the things my parents had said. You're just too sensitive. Your daughter needs to learn to deal with things. Life isn't always going to be easy like you think. I felt like I was talking to a wall. Even though I explained why I did what I did, my sister still didn't get it. The more I tried to explain, the more it felt like a waste of time, because she wasn't seeing things from my daughter's perspective. I had grown accustomed to this kind of response from my family, where I was always labeled as too sensitive and criticized for protecting the ones I love. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and cut the conversation short. You can side with Mom and Dad if you want, but I won't continue like this. I'll always protect my daughter, no matter what anyone says. I hung up, and while I felt a wave of frustration wash over me, I also felt a sense of relief for finally saying what I felt. Although the tension with my family wasn't over, I realized that I couldn't change how my parents or sister thought. The most important thing was that I had done what felt right for me, and I had protected the ones I love. As for the relationship with my family, we would need time to heal. But at least now I felt proud of standing up for my daughter, and I knew I had done the right thing.